Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from my side. I am João Borges. I am the Conference Presence Chair at the International Younger Chemists Network, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this sixth workshop of the series on professional development skills we have been organizing. And today we'll be talking about grant writing. And you can see this information within the slide. And we'll have two amazing speakers. Dr. Robert Bowles from the Royal Society of Chemistry, and we have also Dr. Elisabetta Benazzi. She's a Marie Curie Fellow, and will also share her advice and tips on how to write a Marie Curie, and we'll have also general tips and tricks from Robert on the writing grants. So first, let me thank both of them for kindly joining us in this webinar, as well as all of you for keeping supporting us and attending the workshops we have been organizing within the IYCN. So let me just introduce also Claudia. Claudia is also a member of the conference presence team, and she will introduce herself. Please, Claudia.
Hi everyone, my name is Claudia, and I'm currently an 1851 research fellow at the University of Cambridge, the Department of Chemistry, and I used to be a Marie Curie fellow as well. Welcome everyone.
Thank you, Claudia. So Claudia will be moderating later on the panel discussion of this workshop. So here we show the program of this workshop. So we'll have the first talk will be given by Robert, and you can see the title. So we'll be on grant writing tips. And then we'll have the talk from Elisabetta that will share her experience, as I mentioned, while being a Marie Curie Global Fellow. So each talk will have 20 minutes. We won't have questions after each talk, but please put your questions in the chat box. You can identify that within the control panel. And we'll be making all the questions to the speakers during the panel discussion after both talks. So we should have around 30 minutes, which seems to be, we believe, enough for answer your questions and doubts and engage with the panelists. And then we'll show some closing remarks. So before going into the workshop itself, let me just briefly introduce the network for those of you that are not still aware of the International Younger Chemists Network. So we are an associated organization of IUPAC since 2017. And here we can see our vision and mission for the network. So our vision is to connect and empower younger chemists worldwide. And our mission is to support and advocate for younger chemists working across different fields of chemical science towards assigning a globally sustainable future. So for those of you that are not aware and do not know the requisites to join the network, so in brief, if you are doing your bachelor, master, or PhD studies across chemical science, you are eligible to be part of the network. Even though if you already finished, for instance, your PhD and you are doing your postdoc, you are eligible. And also, if you finish for instance, your postdoc within the last 5 years, you are also eligible to be part of the network. If you want to know more information, you please go into this form, the link that we share in here, and you have all this information that I just mentioned in there. In any case, if you have any doubts, please reach out to us. We'll be very happy to connect with you and answer any doubts that you might have. And just to remind you that this is a free membership, so please take advantage. And if you believe that you could contribute as well to the network, we'll be very happy to learn from you. So with this said, so let's move into the webinar. So our first speaker is Robert Bowles. So he graduated in biological science and received his PhD in marine biotechnology from the University of Portsmouth in the UK. And then he moved out of the lab and gained 5 years of experience in sales and marketing of educational software to schools. He then joined the Royal Society of Chemistry 12 years ago, and he has managed a program of their successful education and careers projects. He's really a qualified careers advisor. He has been working on the topic for more than 12 years, and he currently works in the Royal Society of Chemistry Careers Management team, offering careers advice to their membership and wider chemistry community. So with this, Robert will be talking about general grant writing tips that will help us through our career to how to address the specific topics of different grants. And with this, I'm very pleased to ask Robert to please share your presentation and screen.
Can you see that okay, everyone?
Yes, just please turn on your camera, please.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Robert.
No problem. Thanks very much, João, for organising today, and thanks, Claudia, for inviting me as well. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk to you just for a quick 20 minutes about just some tips for kind of grant writing. This is experience that's been distilled down from a number of sources. Obviously, I've not only got 20 minutes. I could do the full hour and a half on it, and obviously, I don't want to steal Elisabetta's content either. But so it's going to be pretty general, yeah. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do, but this is really just a kind of range of things for you to be talking about, things to be thinking about. I work with a lot of people that are working in academics that are looking for grant writing success. I review a number of grant applications for people. And it's people all around the world as well. So if we get on to what I'm going to be covering today, so I'm going to get you thinking really. I want to try and get you thinking about, you know, the first one, why are you writing it? You know, a grant proposal is a lot of work. Yeah, it's a big commitment. So that's the first starting point for you really. Why are you writing it? What do you want to kind of achieve with your writing? The 3 Ps is just 3 things for you to be thinking about while you are writing that proposal, while you're putting it together, 3 things that you need to be making sure that you're covering off. And then I'm going to finish off really just pointing you to some ideas for other sources of support and information to kind of emphasize this idea that, you know, you don't necessarily need to be writing it alone. So first of all, why are you doing it? This is really important because it's really get you to think that, recognize that not all writing the same. So when you write all through your academic career, you've been taught in a particular way. You know, you've been taught to present your science in a way that other people can reproduce it. You know, that's what a thesis is. That's what a scientific paper is. But it's not what a grant or a project proposal is, okay? And you can even take that further when you're writing for other reasons as well. You need to be thinking about the audience. You need to think about why you're writing, what you want people to be doing as a result of your writing. So who are you writing for? What do you want them to do as a result of your writing? So for a grant proposal, it seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's to inform, it's to tell the people that are reading it about your project, about you, but it's also to influence. So you've actually got to get them to change their behavior. You've actually got to get them to give you money, give you hundreds of thousands of pounds, euros, pesetas, whatever. So that's really important for you to think about. Yeah, why are you writing it and what you actually want them to achieve? It sounds really obvious, but actually I see a lot of people that write grant proposals in exactly the same way that they have written their thesis, in exactly the same way they've written their scientific paper, and actually that's not going to be good enough. And so if we build on that theme, you know, the science, is that going to be enough? I talked to a lot of scientists, they're very excited about their science, as they should be. You know, you've been studying it, you've been doing that research, it's kind of almost defines you, but actually that's not going to be enough to get you a successful grant application. Just because you've got a good idea, just because there's a subject that interests you, just because you think it would be good to do research in that area, again, that's not enough to get you your grant. It's a competitive process. You've got to stand out. So you've actually got to sell what you're writing about, explain what you're writing about. Just because something is interesting to you doesn't mean it's going to be interesting to other people. So the onus is on you as the writer of that grant to make it interesting. Yeah, you've got to show them why they should be interested in it, why it should be relevant to the funder. You've got to construct that relevance, show the links between what you want to research and their goals. It's also not what you've done in the past. So I've seen applications where, you know, a half of the application is actually just recounting what you've done in your previous work. Again, it's useful to include that as a starting point, but just going over what you've written before isn't going to be successful in a grant application. And the other trap that you can fall into is, because you're into your science, you do it every day, you're an expert in that field, don't necessarily assume that the person reading it has the same level of expertise that you do. So if you're using language, if you're using acronyms that are specific to a particular technical area, don't make it too specific, and if you do have to use specific language, make sure you spell it out and explain it, because there will be people on the grant review panel that aren't an expert in that area. And again, that's the challenge for you, to make it, to sell it, is to explain it and present it in a way that can be understood by a wide range of people that are actually going to be making the judgment on your application. So before you even sit down to write, you need to have a really clear idea on what the grant application is going to be for. So this is a group of questions that a chap called Heilmeyer came up with. It comes from engineering, but I've taken it because I think it's really relevant for writing grant applications. So it's a group of questions that you need to ask yourself, and you need to be kind of really quite clear in the answers to them. So why? What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? What is it that you're actually trying to achieve? Again, that could be an issue for some people. They just talk round and round. They're not really clear on what you want your grant to pay for. Why now? So why is it important? Why does this have to be done right now, this minute? Is it something that will open up a brand new area of science? Is it something that is going to solve a problem that a lot of people have? How does it fit in with what's been done in the world? Is it novel? So that's pretty much a requirement for every kind of grant application, every fellowship. Can you show that your idea is new? What's new in your approach? Why do you think it's going to be successful? And again, this is an area where people can come unstuck. What will it achieve? So, I put the question there, who cares? As I said, it might be interesting to you, but is it going to be interesting to other people? What's going to happen as a result of your project? And then you go into the specifics about the project. So what is it that you need to deliver that project? What are the key milestones? So these are things that you need to be thinking about way before you actually get to the point of sitting down to apply for grant, because they're actually going to inform what type of grant you're going to apply for, what funding body you're going to apply for. So they're really important, and that's part of your journey as an independent researcher, to have the vision to work this out and be clear on where you want to go with this. Another way to think about it, this is something that I found in a book fairly recently that I read, what every postdoc should know, the 3 Ps. So the 3 Ps are the project, the person, and the place. So again, these are things that you have to have really clear answers on. So project, what's your hypothesis? What is it that you're actually going to be researching? What do you want to find out? What do you think the outputs from it are going to be? The person seems obvious, but it's amazing how many grant applications, fellowship applications, people are happy writing about the science and what you're going to do, but don't include enough about you as a person. So fellowships, they're about career progression. They're about getting your research career established. They're quite often training fellowships. So what are you going to get out of that, as well as the science? And then the place, just as important. Where are you going to do it? A lot of fellowship and funders look for you to actually demonstrate your independence by actually moving beyond maybe your current host university. And if you are going to stay at your current university, have a really clear idea of why. Yeah, you're going to have very strong reasons why you're going to stay where you are. Again, this links back to your ability to form your independent career. Sooner or later, you need independence. You need to go a place where you are valued, where you can add value to the department that's going to host you. So again, you need to have a clear outlook on that. So the project, what works? Again, your hypothesis, what do you want to test? What do you want to find out? Why is it important? What are you trying to, the right level of ambition. Again, that's really important. Are you innovative enough, or is it kind of blue sky stuff, or is it just kind of a baby step and logical extension from what you're doing? Be really clear on that. If you have any preliminary data, by all means include it, but again, present it in a way that demonstrates the potential of the project. Don't get too bogged down in explaining what you've done before. have a really clear idea of what methodology you're going to use to deliver that project. A plan B. So, you know, you might get a year into the project and something hasn't worked. The funder is still going to want to get value for money for their investment in you. So if it doesn't work, have you got another alternative approach that you can use to try and work it out? That's about you being a professional researcher, mitigating the risks that the funding body might have. And so again, with a fellowship, you know, what training, what work environment are you going to be working in? How do you're going to develop and grow as a person? And also the kind of, as I said, that the resources you'll need to do it for. So think about it from the funder's point of view. And again, this is something that a lot of people don't always do. You know, what is it that they're looking for? You have to kind of put yourself in their thoughts. So is it the right idea in the right place? So look at who is going to fund it. Is it a good match with their strategic goals? Is it the right scheme? Yeah, is it a early career research grant? Is it a more advanced one? What fits into your career stage? Don't forget to make sure you're clear on the eligibility and the rules, because that's going to get you tossed out at the first instance. Seems obvious, but it's really important to be kind of aware of that. And again, maybe look at that in advance. Yeah, if you know that particular fellowships you have to apply within a certain number of years of doing your PhD, have a strategic plan about when you're going to be doing that. A lot of things that other people don't do, they just look at the website, look at the guidelines. They never actually speak to someone at the funding organisation. These organisations, they want people to send in good applications. They're always happy to talk to potential applicants. Make use of that. Find out what you need to know to put in a good application. And obviously it's got to be good science, but it's also got to be interesting. It's got to be novel. Is just carrying on what you've been doing for your PhD or your current postdoc, is that going to be enough? And as I said, how is it going to fit in with their strategy? So if it's in healthcare, if it's in the environmental side, whatever it is, whatever you need to do to kind of tailor your research ideas to their strategy, you need to be thinking about that as well. A few common things that don't work. Is it dull to read? Obviously subjective, or is it poorly written? But actually, you know, if you're, again, thinking about it from the funder's point of view, if you're one of the people on the funding committee, you've got, I know, 50 grant applications, 10, 20 grant applications. Which ones are going to stand out? The ones that are easy to read, that are interesting to read. Again, as I said, don't put too much emphasis on what you've done before, because that's what you've done. It's very easy to talk about that and get too hung up on that. Unfocused, a lack of focus. So be specific what you want to achieve, what you want to try and find out. It may not be appropriate to the funding body. So again, be really clear. Think strategically about what funding bodies fund the sort of research that you want to do, or what approach can you take with your research to tailor it to what they're looking for. As I said, there may not be a clear hypothesis. You may not have thought that through, but actually you need to. As I said, what happens if it doesn't work? What are you going to do there? So these are all things that you get into the specifics of you as a project manager, you as having responsibility for that project, you as mitigating the risk from the funding body. They want to invest in you, but they actually also want to protect their investment as well. So, you know, when you're thinking about the research group that you want to join, or that you want to go, which department you want to go into, is it the right one? Yeah, can other people do the work better? Just because you've been working with them in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a better group available. And again, the onus is on you to seek out that. And again, just because you're comfortable working in a particular university, there might be another university that has way better facilities, a way better infrastructure to support this specific piece of research. Another common thing is that the training element is unclear. So you might be able to write really eloquently about the science and about the project, but actually, have you thought about the training aspect of it, particularly for fellowships, junior fellowships? They want to know that their investment is in you. Yeah, it's not in the science, it's in you as a person. What training do you need to get to be a better scientist at the end of it? What training do you need to get to deliver the project? Yeah, and again, if you haven't thought that through, that should be linked to what your career goals are. If you haven't thought that through, you're going to come unstuck on that, and that's going to be a really clear reason why they might not give you the funding. And again, I talked about, you know, you being the right person, the right project, and so on. So lots to think about there, but they're all really important. You know, so how do you get competitive? You're basically asking them to trust you. That you're asking them to invest their money in you as a person. So you need to be able to demonstrate your potential as a research leader, a leader in the field. Yeah, what have you done in your career up to now to convince them of that? And that could be your expertise, but it could also be your ability to train or mentor other scientists. It could be that that's where they're looking for your novel thought, your independence, your vision for where you want your research to go. And also, have you got a track record of delivering, you know, on papers? That's obviously the major factor, but also delivery on other projects. So when you've been working as a postdoc, has the postdoc or the project delivered what you set out to do? How have you managed that process to ensure it has happened? Have you been successful with other grants? And that could be anything from as simple as a simple travel grant for a few €100 right the way through to, you know, larger projects as well. So again, you need to demonstrate your vision for your future research. Yeah, that's what they're investing in. What is this fellowship going to lead to? And if you struggle with that, I would make sure that you take the time to set aside time to think that through properly, because that's going to be crucial, not just to get in the fellowship, but also to your career that comes afterwards. Yeah, a fellowship, a grant application, that's not a career. That's just going to something that's going to keep you going for the next year or two. And, you know, be really clear whether there's the potential for future collaborations with industry as well. Again, that's something that a lot of funders value as well. So the final P, the third P, that's the place. So, you know, who is your host university? As I said, it shouldn't always be where you're postdocing, and I would encourage you to kind of look further afield, because it does two things. It demonstrates your independence, but it also demonstrates your ability to build those scientific collaborations that you're going to need through the rest of your career. And it could be that if you do want to stay at your host university, you need to make the case for that. So it might have a particular equipment or particular expertise, but actually you may need to go further afield to find the university that have that. And crucially, have you got their support? When you put in your fellowship application, you've got to have done the groundwork to make sure that if it is successful, they're happy to kind of accept you. You need to have quite clear conversations with them about their level of support, the level of equipment, the level of lab space, the level of technician support that they can make available to you in the event that you are successful, and get that in writing as well. That's really important before you do apply. So this all sounds quite daunting, and it is. But again, this is maybe somewhere where a lot of people make the mistake of trying to go in alone. I've talked to people that are scared that other people are going to, you know, steal their research ideas. Well, you know, I think it comes down to you're the expert in the field. You're probably going to know more about it than they do. But actually, you've got to sooner or later you're going to have to start trusting people. So, you know, the more people that look at your proposals, the better. You know, run it past colleagues. A lot of PhD and postdoc groups will have kind of grant writing workshops where you can kind of share your ideas with other people. But sooner or later, you've got to get something down on paper, and then you've got to refine it as much as you can. So that first draft is going to be rubbish. The second draft is going to be rubbish. The third draft might be starting to get a bit better. Yeah. So it's going to be an ongoing process, and it's going to take time, but you don't have to do it alone. So, you know, as I said, the funder will give you help. They'll have a website. They'll often have a helpline that you can contact. Your university, your current one, and your potential host university, they will both have people maybe in a research support office or similar that can help you. When you're coming to put in the funding together, the finance office, they will be able to give you guidance on what to include for that. Talk about more experienced colleagues. So are there people that either postdocs, either academic staff, maybe your PI that have been successful in the past? Will they help you show your grant? Will they share their successful proposals with you? You know, particularly if you're looking at collaborators, it's in their interest to do that and make that clear to them. There might be committee members that have sat on evaluation committees. Can you talk to them? Can you find out what they look for in a grant application? Can you give them yours to look at? How would you know, how would they view it if you were applying? And also look at, talk to people that have been successful before. So, people like Elisabetta, people like Claudia that have been successful in fellowships previously. They're a really good resource for you to use to kind of give you feedback on your applications as you go through it. So, top tips: plan ahead. It's going to take longer than you think. Yeah. Make sure that you assign time in your calendar. Don't just think, oh well, time will happen, because it won't. Yeah, there's always more research, there's always more papers to get out. Think about how long it's going to take. Start from the deadline, work your way backwards. It's important, but don't make it urgent. So don't leave it all to the last minute, because the quality will suffer. So read the manual, be really clear about the information that they provide. Make sure that you're really familiar with that. Understand the processes involved. If anything you don't understand, get support from them, from the funders. And for the fellowships, particularly early career on, this is the things to think about. How is it going to help your career? Yeah. What are you going to get out of it? How is it going to get you to where you want to go in your career? A fellowship isn't a career. It's just the kind of next stage to get to where you want to be. A training plan is actually crucial. So what are you going to learn? When are you going to learn it? Who's going to teach it to you? Be specific about, how it's going to help you with how that project outcomes is going to lead you on forward, and also choose the right place and the right mentors. So just because you're joining a kind of internationally renowned research group, it doesn't necessarily mean that the head of that group is going to be a good mentor, because they may not have time. Yeah, it might be someone maybe more junior who's got a bit more time, but can actually invest more time in you as well. And if you do get an interview, go for some mock interviews. Yeah, get used to talking about your research, because you'll have to do that at the interview stage. Get used to explaining it, get used to selling it. Yeah, really important that you can explain and show your vision to other people to be successful. Lots of help and support available. If you're an RSC member, you can get in touch with us. We can do one-to-one consultation around anything related to your career. As I said, we've also reviewed documents in the past, basically just as an extra pair of eyes. Some people find writing really hard, so there's some resources there. Things like I Think Well Hugh. He's got lots of resources about how to discipline yourself to actually sit down and write, because that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. You've got to make the time and the commitment to sit down and do that writing. There's a couple of books there I'd recommend as well. The Professor is in, what every postdoc should know. They're well worth having a look at. I'm also just going to mention a conference that I'm running in September, the Skłodowska-Curie Conference. This is a conference that we've been running at the RSC for a number of years. It's going to be online this year, so it's available to everyone. 8th and 9th of September, 2 days. Basically, this is really aimed at people like you, people that are looking to launch their research careers. We're going to have people, you see some of the speakers there. The keynote is from a fantastic guy down in University of Cape Town. He's established a really research group down there. And it's going to be finding out more about how to get funding. Yeah, there's people that do this all day long, that advise researchers all day long. There are people that have been successful in the past, people talking about the importance of it interdisciplinary. And crucially, there's also going to be a funding workshop where you can bring along a one-page proposal, and you'll discuss it within groups and get specific feedback to kind of help you when you do this going forward. So it's well worth looking at. It's only £30 to attend for kind of 2 weeks. So, and because it's kind of remote, you don't have to take time out of the lab. You can fit it in around your other commitments as well. There's all my contact information on screen. Hopefully that, as I said, I've only had 20 minutes, but hopefully that's given you some things to think about, some things that you need to kind of have really clear in your head before you start down to write. And yeah, I wish you all every success in your grant writing.
Thanks a lot, Robert. Yeah, thanks a lot, Robert, for this very insightful talk. Such great tips and advice for better writing our proposal, as well as to remember that 3 P's, so the project, the place, and the person, this is very key while writing a grant. So thank you very much. We already got some questions, and we keep asking the attendees to please write them down in the chat, and we'll handle them to both Robert and Elisabetta after Elisabetta's talk during the panel. So thank you very much. I will now follow up with the program. So the next speaker will be Dr. Elisabetta Benazzi. So she earned her master degree in chemistry from University of Padova in Italy, and her PhD from University of Ferrara in Italy as well. And she has been working on development of new electrochemical energy storage and conversion device. Then she worked as an associated researcher at University of Newcastle in UK, and then she returned to University of Ferrara, working in the field of homogeneous CO2 reduction. So currently, Elisabetta is a Marie Curie Global Fellow. So this is a very competitive fellowship, very difficult to get. And she is doing it at the University of Padova and Caltech, so California Institute of Technology in the US. And the aim of her work is to develop photoelectrolyzer to efficiently convert nitrogen to ammonia. So with that, I'm very pleased to ask Elisabetta to please share your screen and share your talk with us and your advice.
Can you see everything?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Nice.
Thank you.
So thank you for inviting me. I'm Elisabetta Benazzi, and I'm a Marie Curie Global Fellows. Today, I would like to present Nitrogen Light, so my experience with a global fellowship. I will start speaking about my background. I obtained my master degree in chemistry at the University of Padova. Then I moved to Ferrara for my PhD and a postdoc, where I work in a renewable energy field, developing a new storage system, new redox mediators for dye-sensitized solar cells, characterizing molecular devices for solar fuel production, and working on photocatalytic CO2 reduction. During the last year of the PhD, I spent 6 months at Paris-Lodron University, investigating novel nanostructure photoanodes for photoelectrochemical water oxidation. The postdoc at Newcastle University represented an extension of my work in Ferrara, and during the postdoc, I developed the photocathodes for dye-sensitized solar cell and water splitting based on oxide semiconductors sensitized with organic dyes. At the same time, I determined and analyzed through transient absorption spectroscopy techniques lifetime of photoinduced processes of polyoxometallate-based hybrids and dyes. Then I started a global fellowship, which comprises an outgoing phase at Caltech under the supervision of Professor Jonas Peters, a secondment at the J. Roski Institute of Physical Chemistry under the supervision of Tony Czech, and finally the return phase at the University of Padova under the supervision of Professor Marcella Bonchio. My project, in particular, lies in the panorama of nitrogen reduction, but offering a new point of view. It aims to develop a photoelectrolyzer to efficiently convert nitrogen to ammonia. During the period at Caltech, I will work on what is the state-of-the-art knowledge for nitrogen fixation with molecular catalysts. Then, during the secondment, I will focus on inoperando studies and photophysical characterization of a nitrogen photofixation system. While, during the return phase, I will exploit photoanode for water oxidation to be combined with nitrogen photofixation. The timeline I follow to prepare the project is quite linear. In May 2019, I attained MSCA training courses and webinars. Then, in June, I started thinking about the main theme of my project, contacting the most suitable supervisor to carry out the fellowship. I spent part of June and then the entire July writing the project, so doing bibliographic research, thinking about research objectives, risk evaluation, dissemination, and communication strategies. I kept in touch with my supervisor all the time, and in the middle of August, I sent back defiantly my proposal to my supervisor for feedback. Keep in mind that your supervisor opinions are very valuable, and try to follow them carefully. Finally, in September, my proposal was corrected, and so I finished the proposal and I submit it. But which are the reasons why I applied for a global fellowship? Fundamentally different reasons: to expand my scientific network, to eventually join the Seal of Excellence in Padova, which provides with a score higher than 86% in the fellowship, 2 years financed by the university, during which you can try again the Marie Curie, to obtain a position in the academia, to write and direct my own projects, to acquire new expertise and skills, to have the possibility to publish in high impact factor journals, to live a challenging experience in a very innovative institution like as Caltech, and finally to participate to conferences with my own money. But what do you really need to apply? For sure, an innovative project with a theme in line with the European context and objectives, which is also in line with your past research, but it allows you to reinforce your professional maturity. Expert supervisor in your project field, with a long-lasting experience and study that are a breakthrough in the theme you are interested in, MSCA training and courses, like as the MSCA Marathon that will be held in Padova in May. And the last thing, research funding officers of your host university, for example, that will help you outlining the organization of the project. Keep in mind that all the Marie Curie, not only the global, but also the European, is structured in 3 parts. You have the excellence, where you have to outline the overview of the action, the two-way transfer of knowledge, the quality of the supervision, the potential to reach and reinforce independence. Then you have the impact, where you enhance your perspectives for a future career, show the appropriate measure to disseminate project results, and to communicate the project activities to different audiences. Finally, you have the implementation, where you speak about the coherence and effectiveness of the work plan in a proper Gantt chart, and when you speak about risk management. The excellence, as you can see, is the most important part. That gives you 50% of your score, while impact and implementation gives you respectively the 30% and the 20%. I would like to show you my score to start speaking about what can be considered a strength and a weakness in every part. In particular, I obtain a score equal to 4.5 in the excellence, and of 4.7 in both impact and implementation. Focusing on the excellence part, a strength should be the fact that the proposal has a good innovative potential in terms of objectives and methodologies applied to a topic of high relevance for industry and policy in the European Union. The fact that the project addresses different fields of research and has a high number of multidisciplinary aspects. The fact that the project objectives are clear, concise, and achievable. And finally, the fact that the two-way transfer between the host and the researcher is comprehensive and fully in line with the proposal. On the other hand, things that should represent weakness points are, for example, the originality of the research is not convincingly demonstrated because the work is a continuation of already published results. Methodological approaches are insufficiently explained, so generic methods and materials to be used are mentioned, but some experimental designs to carry out the project are insufficiently detailed. And the proposal does not match successfully the researcher's profile with the proposed project. While, taking into account the impact section, strength point should be the fact that the conventional scientific dissemination channels are given, so publication in peer-reviewed journals and science magazines are expected. The fact that outreach activities are indicated and credible with proposed communication to different target audiences, for example via website, popular science articles, press release and newsletter. On the other hand, the weakness you can find are that the publication of the results in more generalist journals to target a broader scientific audience is not sufficiently considered, and the proposal does not describe with the required detail a strategy for targeting other communities apart from the scientific community. Concerning the implementation, the strength should be that the work plan as a whole is well designed and appears to be current and effective, so the estimated time for each work package appears in the Gantt chart. The fact that the management structure is adequate for both the outgoing and the return phases, so regular meetings, for example, are planned between the supervisor and the department, and the researcher and the department. And finally, the fact that the remedial action plan to overcome the areas of risk identified are appropriate and well described. On the other hand, some weakness could be the fact that some of the deliverables and milestones are not clearly shown in the Gantt chart, making it difficult to estimate the time reserved for their execution. The fact that the training aspects are inadequately indicated in the work packages and within the Gantt chart. And finally, exploitation and dissemination is not featured in the work plan in sufficient detail, and potential risks have not been addressed in a very specific way. Keep in mind that during the drafting of the fellows, as Robert said before, but in general for all the grant, you have to answer to 4 questions. What? Which is the theme of the project I want to write? Why? Which is the aim of the project? Why now? Why this topic of global urgency? Why me? Why I'm the best candidate to carry out the project? Now, I will show you some general tips that helped me during the writing of the Marie Curie. First of all, keep in mind that you have to tell an engaging story. So don't just write a scientific report. This story has to include the overall aim of the individual fellowship, so the evaluators know exactly what it will entail, including an introduction to the fellow, supervisor, host organization, and secondment organization. In this phase, the introduction, don't forget to report catchy phrases to keep the attention of the evaluator's eye, while explaining the importance of the research being carried out and how it addresses a priority at a global European level. For example, refer to UN Sustainable Development Goals. Remember that it's crucial to not only describe your research, but to sell yourself, your scientific plan, and your future training. Remember that two-way transfer is a key point of Marie Curie. This consists of 2 basic points. The knowledge you can acquire from the host, like as research skills, so training for research, transferable and complementary skills, like as grant writing, project management, presentation skills, communication and dissemination skills, hands-on training, like as staff development programs, training courses, workshops, online courses, and finally, intersectoral and interdisciplinary transfer of knowledge, including what you are going to do, when and why, during secondment and short visits. Two-way transfer include also another basic point, the knowledge you can transfer to the host. This can basically include the seminars that you are going to do at the host institution on research skill you have and on instrumental skills you have. Concerning your CV, there is this myth that it's all about how many nature you have. This is not true. It's about telling your story today and what you led you to this point, trying to get the evaluator to relate and understand you, so keep them interested. It's about demonstrating how you have key transferable skills, so leadership skills and independent thinking. And it's about reminding the evaluator why you are the best person to do this fellowship to achieve the research results and reach your career goals. Remember that the majority of evaluators will not be expert in the specific subject, and so write in a style that is accessible to the non-experts. But at the same time, be specific on which techniques you are going to use, experiments you are going to do, collaborators, courses, journals in which you want to publish, and laboratories in which you want to go, as you can see from my examples. Sometimes you will need acronyms, so use them and number them to reduce the space and to make the text easier to understand. Here I give you some example. For example, WWP for working package, T for task, and MS for milestone. Pay attention to keywords. For example, know the difference between dissemination and communication. Dissemination is for experts in the field, like as scientific peers, industries, professionals, policymakers. Communication is directed to common people, like as general public, university students, and secondary school students. Concerning dissemination, don't forget to name journals in which you want to publish and conferences you'd like to go. Concerning the communication part, remember that also social networks are important tools. Remember that also the Gantt chart represents a fundamental part of the implementation. It has to include 2 or 3 research packages, working packages for management, working packages for dissemination strategies and communication strategies, task, so objective you have to carry out to complete working packages, deliverables, so distinct output of the working package, milestone, so control points to help with progress. Remember that for every work packages, you have some tasks, 1 deliverable and 1 milestone. In general, for my Marie Curie was like this. For all the Marie Curie, remember that you have to be consistent, since everything in a Marie Curie is interconnected. For example, your specific objective in the research methodology and approach of the excellence correspond to a working package in the implementation. Furthermore, the dissemination working package in your implementation has to refer to dissemination strategy in the impact, as you can see in the figure. As a last thing, I would suggest to make it easy to find the relevant aspect in the text. So use figures, for example, emphasize by formatting, so use bold and underlined. And finally, remember to fit everything in 10 pages. So use tables, insert Gantt chart, for example, as image. If you don't get it, just keep trying and trying. I didn't get it the first time. I also obtained a very, very low score, which became 92% the second time. I completely changed project and also host institution, but having achieved a high impact score the first time, the second time I kept the original structure for the impact part. So learn from your mistake, and Marie Curie is a journey. So enjoy it. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Elisabetta, for these very nice tips on how to write a Marie Curie fellowship. Also, I don't know, you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. So this was very nice also for those that are finishing their PhD, because you can only apply to the European or this global fellowship if you have completed at least 4 years of research, or if you have finished your PhD. And if you want to apply for a PhD Marie Curie fellowship, you have the Inter-European Inter-European network grants that you can also apply for funding through your institution. Now we have reached to the panel discussion, so I will please ask Claudia and Robert and Elisabetta to please join Claudia, and she will guide the panel and answer to the questions by the attendees. So please, Claudia.
Yeah, thanks, Joao, and thanks again to Robert and Elisabetta for their very nice presentations. So we have already a lot of questions, so let me just say that in case we don't make it to the end of the questions, which I'm sure we won't, we will do our best and we will ask our speakers eventually to give us the answers by email, and then we'll try to find a way to share them with you later. So the first question is actually a clarification on Robert's talk. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this name correctly. Adebayo, I think, asked something about one of your don'ts, the slide in which you say what not to do or what could be the problems, about the fact that you put in the list the lack of an appropriate infrastructure or facilities. So could you just clarify on this point why the lack of?
Yeah, let me just bring it back up and I'll remind myself. Yeah, so I guess it's really just to kind of make sure that where you have to be able to convince the funder that you can actually carry out the research that you say you're going to do. So you need to be realistic about the work that you expect to do and the equipment and the lab and where it is that you expect that to do. So it's not to say don't go for fellowship or don't apply where they haven't got much infrastructure. It's just to make sure that the research that you do is technically possible within the host institution. So yeah, it's not say don't go somewhere without any infrastructure. It's just to make sure that it's appropriate to the research that you expect to carry out.
Perfect. So thanks a lot. I hope we have answered. Just let us know in case we haven't. So the next question is for both of you. And it comes from Luis Fernando from the Czech Republic. And it's about, it's something that Elisabetta already mentioned briefly. So the question is, what do you do if you don't have the perfect background, the perfect grades, the perfect papers for the application, for the fellowship you are applying for? And I think related to that, we can expand this a bit further by trying to address the problem that many early career researchers have, especially after their PhD. They don't have yet enough things to show on their CV. They haven't yet got other fellowships, so they cannot yet be that convincing, maybe. So what do they do about that? We can start with Elisabetta.
Okay, from my point of view, the Marie Curie, the global, the European are for early researchers. So it's not like, I mean, you can try to apply when you finish your PhD. I think that the need to have huge CV is a kind of false myth. I think that the most important thing you need to have is like a CV, so research expertise in line with the project you want to apply. So for example, if you work during the PhD on, I don't know, in my case, for example, I work on photoelectrochemical characterization. My Marie Curie is on photoelectrochemical characterization. I mean, not with the same objectives, but with the same strategies. I think this is the most important thing, not really your CV, not really how many papers you have. So for the Marie Curie, I mean, then when you have to apply for other fellowship, for sure the things are different.
Thanks. Robert?
Yeah, so I think I'd say the other thing I'd add for that is that you see this at every stage of people's careers. You know, no one is ever the perfect candidate for a particular job, for a particular fellowship. I think it's about whether you can be credible, and that's what, going back to what Elisabetta said, are you, you know, can they invest in you as a person? Can you give a narrative about why you are where you are in your career? Can you demonstrate what you can do rather than what you can't have? If you get hung up on trying to have the perfect CV or trying to have the perfect experience, you never actually apply for anything, and you always find reasons not to do things rather than actually say, actually what I have got, I'm going to go for it and see what happens. And you know, as Elisabetta said, you know, first time round you may not be successful, but next time round you might be. Yeah, so you know, don't talk yourself out of things.
Great, thanks a lot. So the next question is for Elisabetta, and again, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Swagotom, I hope, well, from Bangladesh, is interested in how easy is to get grant proposals that have been awarded in the past shared with you. How do you go about that? It's something that Robert mentioned before, the fact that it's useful to have awarded proposals from previous years. So how many proposals did you have for your fellowship, and how do you get them?
I had 2 proposals, I remember. The first time I had 3 proposals. The first time I obtained a very, very low score. I had 3 proposals, and was my my host supervisor that gave me the proposals from his institution. The second time I had 2 proposals, one from one of my friends that working in Ferrara with me. She obtained a Marie Curie in Ferrara, the University of Ferrara. And then the second one that gave me my host supervisor at Padova University. So I had 2 Marie Curie.
So how would you suggest for people that, for example, are in a different country and want to move to the new country, so they don't know yet anyone at the institution, how would you find a way to get access to proposals?
I mean, try to ask to your host supervisor, for example, like I did the first time, or to your colleagues, friends, or just also if you follow, for example, one MSCCA training course. I guess there are some speakers that can give you their proposals, for example. Eventually, if they are in the same field, for sure. For example, it's not really useful for me to give my proposal to one that is applying in philosophy, I guess, but in the same field could be a possibility. So, yeah.
Thanks a lot. And now we have a question for Robert. This is from Paul from Japan. And it's related to the last slide that you've shown with the books that one could look at for grant writing. So are there online tools, blogs? What do you think about professional proofreaders and professionals that can help in writing grants? And what do you think about softwares like Grammarly or other softwares that can potentially support in the grant writing?
So, I mean, I think anything that improves your grammar and spelling, you know, by all means use it. I think particularly if English isn't your first language. I think, you know, there will be, you know, just Google it and see what's out there. There's going to be a lot of information out there. You know, there are a lot of events like this being run all around the world. You know, a lot of the funding bodies will be putting on webinars, we'll be putting on the training courses like Elisabetta went to. It's all about actually you investing your time in your career to actually see what's out there. You know, if this is important to you, if this is something that you really want to do, you know, there's never been a better time to find out information. You know, it did used to be a closed shop, you know, but, you know, since the internet, since the web is out there, everyone has access to information, and you just have to spend the time finding out a bit. So I don't think there's any one magic bullet, but certainly anything that improves your writing is good. But actually, you know, the onus is at the end of the day, it's your career. Yeah. So if this is important to you, you need to find those sources out there. And yeah, I'm not sure I can add a lot more than that, to be honest.
I think
Elisabetta,
that's amazing.
how did you research it? How did you go about finding out what fellowship you wanted to apply for and why? What other tools did you use?
Yeah, so why did you pick the Marie Curie Fellowship, Elisabetta, or did you apply for others? Why one, or why? How do you pick them?
Why I choose, I mean, the global.
Or why, if you applied for other fellowships as well?
No, not really. I mean, I tried the first time a European fellowship to go in the UK, and then I applied for a Marie Curie Global Fellowship for different reasons. I mean, some reason I spoke about some reason for sure in the presentation. I think that the first reason why is that I thought to be at the perfect time in my career to apply for a Marie Curie. That's the first reason why I choose a Marie Curie and not another grant. But I didn't apply for other grants, just for the Marie Curie. And I really wanted to work with my supervisor, with the supervisor I choose, and I really wanted to do the project I'm doing. So there was really my choice was really related to my supervisor. In my case, I mean, it's not in every case, but in my case was like this.
Thanks.
So.
What I can add on this is that for my personal experience, what I did when I was looking for fellowships to apply for was looking at all the funding bodies of the country where I was residing. So I'm currently in the UK, so I had to look at all the funding bodies that I could find that would fund chemistry. I had a look at all the past awardees to see whether I would fit in which kind of fellowship to get an idea of the career stage I would have been competitive for. I started contacting previous awardees just to have feedback or to have information, not necessarily their proposal, but you will find that people are very willing to help and people are very willing to share their proposals or informations or advice. So just to our audience, don't be shy, just reach out for help and advice.
And I think I just add to that. I think if you be specific as well. So if you can be specific about the fellowships that you want to apply for, if you can be specific about the ones that they've been successful in winning, it just adds your request a bit more credibility. And actually, if you just say, can you help me, it's a bit open-ended and they're not necessarily sure what they're letting themselves in for. So actually show an interest in them as a person, show an interest in their research, show that you understand enough about them to be realistic about how you think they could help you. There's a lot of people get, a lot of researchers and PIs get a lot of emails from a lot of people wanting to work with them, but actually those that kind of make the effort to get to know them and be specific about what they want to find out, they're normally the ones that are more willing to help.
Yeah, there's so much to say about that, and it's so true.
That's a whole nother webinar right there, isn't it?
Next time. So we go to another question that I think it's mostly directed to Robert, but I'm happy to hear what Elisabetta thinks. Again, I'm going to read in the wrong way. Shanes, not sure, from the US. The question is, what's the most common mistake that you can make while writing a grant? For example, is it a mistake if you are given 10 pages to fill and you don't fill them? Yes, so we start with Robert.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to that read the manual. Yeah, I think if you're confident that you can say what you want to say in less, I wouldn't say send it in 5, but if it comes out to 9, I wouldn't necessarily fill out that extra page for the sake of it. A lot of it is about how well you can communicate what you want to communicate. And if that takes 9 pages, then use 9 pages. If it uses 10, it uses 10. If it uses 11, you've got a problem, because then it'll just automatically cut off the last page and they won't read it, and you'll automatically get tossed out. So I wouldn't obsess about that too much. And it's a question I get related to that with CVs. How long should a CV be? Well, it should be long enough to demonstrate you have the skills and experience that the person is looking for. But yeah, I mean, I think always be guided by what they say, and less is all right, but I wouldn't never go over.
Thanks. Elisabetta, what do you think is the worst mistake that one can make while writing a grant?
I mean, I don't want really to talk about wrong mistake, but the mistake, but just about my mistakes the first time. For example, the first time I was really optimistic. I didn't really think about the infrastructure and about also the skills of my supervisor. So I was really too much optimistic, and I write things that were not really possible, I guess. So I think this is one of the wrongest things you can do writing a Marie Curie. And so the evaluation of my risks were really bad because of this. So yeah, it's one of the wrong mistakes you can make, I guess.
Thanks. So we got towards the end of the discussion. We still have some time, so if you want to keep asking questions, we can keep trying to answer them. So I'll move to the next question, which is, let's say that you have written your grant and that you have sent it out for feedback from colleagues, friends, and professionals, and so on. Yeah. And let's say that you send it out to 5 different people and you get 5 different feedback. Let's say that they are quite the opposite. What do you do then? We can start from whoever wants, if you prefer.
I mean, I think, yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think at the end of the day, it's your document, and at the end of the day, you've got to kind of be comfortable with what you're saying in. So it's almost like any advice, you know, you can pick or choose which advice you choose to take. So I think in that instance, I would say, you could even go back to them and say, well, why do you say that? You know, are they saying that because it's based on their experience? Is it based on a rumor they heard once in a bar? Or is it actually based on, actually, I've been an evaluator and I know that this is a bad thing to do? So I think that's one thing to think about. I think you can always be, at the end of the day, you're the one, if it is successful, you're the one that's got to defend it and be interviewed about it and talk about it. So always be comfortable with what you end up putting in the final document, and you know, sense check it. You know, ask other people for their opinion about the advice as well. You know, you don't necessarily, again, you don't have to sit there on your own and stew about it. You can seek other people's advice about the advice as well, I think. So I think a lot of people will give you advice, and it's really up to you to choose which you take. And there you have to think about the credibility and the experience of the people that are asking it. I think that's probably the caveat I'd put to most of it.
Yeah, thanks. So Elisabetta, did it happen to you?
I mean, I completely agree with Robert. It's like it's really important to ask to people to evaluate your proposal or to give you advice. But I mean, it's up to you to choose which advice fits better for you. So I mean, just this is my opinion. I mean that you have to trust your supervisor. So try to follow the advice of your supervisor, because they are experts in your research. They know the infrastructures. So try to follow the advice of your supervisor, and also to follow also your thinking. So it's like evaluate the things that other people say, but just try to follow your thinking, I mean, at the end. So
thanks. Okay, so we have a question for Robert. This is from James from Ireland. Do you think that targeting a more specialist, a funding body that is for more specialist, for specialists, so for a niche field, means higher success?
There's a question. So I think there you need to kind of be looking at things like success rates. You know, that all the funding bodies are going to be publishing their success rates. Again, you know, I'd go back to, you know, think about, do you know people that have been successful with that funding body? Is that a good match for your, you know, if your area of research is niche? I think then it might be, but you know, I would look at the success rates as a starting point, and kind of, you know, if it's a niche one and they fund 50% of their applications, then yeah, you know, if it's a niche one and they fund 5%, maybe not. That's probably the best advice. But again, it comes back to the quality of. I'd be less worried about that and more worried about the quality of the application you put in, to be honest. And if it's a good fit for what they're trying to achieve with their funding strategy. So that's back to the project and whether it fits in with their strategy, rather than getting too hung up on what sort of funder they are. I think would probably be my best advice on that one, I think. But again, you know, as I said earlier, these are all our advice, our opinions. They're, you know, if there are reasons why you think, you know, it might be that your supervisor has a particular experience working with that funding body, in which case they might be better placed to support you to do so. It's these things that are rarely black and white.
Yeah, that's so true. So we have a question for Elisabetta. This is from Eddie. So the question is, what kind of experience did you have in terms of dissemination beyond traditional papers? Because as scientists, we are much more used to write scientific papers, and we don't really know, or we are not really trained that much in terms of science communication, interacting with the general audience. So what kind of experience did you have, and how much experience do you actually need when you are writing a grant proposal that asks for these components?
I mean, I had not really a lot of experience. I guess in communication, I had basically no experience. So, but I had some experience in communication to scientific, scientific part of the audience. So, for sure, I went to conferences, different conferences. For sure, I participated to schools, for example, to also to collaboration with secondary school, to seminars with universities, but not really a lot of expertise in this. General, I mean, what we all have is like participation to conferences. We have experience as speakers at conferences. I also had experience as a speaker at conferences. I think that the thing that you need almost, I mean, when you apply for a Marie Curie is like experience as a speaker conference. So this is really important from my point of view. But then you acquire other experience from the point of view of the dissemination during the Marie Curie, because the Marie Curie is really, I mean, the Marie Curie is really it's something that can give you also the Marie Curie, the dissemination skill part. So, but yeah, you don't need a lot of dissemination experience except to conferences and something like this. I guess in my case was like this.
Yeah, I think it's definitely true. It depends a lot on the fellowship you apply for. If it's an early stage fellowship for postdocs or for PhD students, you are not required to have all the experience that would maybe required from a PI, for example. So always try, but everything is written in awarded proposals or guidelines, so you can get this information from speaking with people. So just reach out to people that are familiar with that proposal. So we have another question for Robert. You mentioned in your talk that one of the sources of help that you can get are funding bodies. And it's always very difficult to think about funding bodies as someone that can help you. They are sort of seen like the enemies that you don't know how to approach. What kind of help can funding bodies give you?
So I think that, so a lot of the questions that have been asked today, the funding body would have been able to explain. So, about things like the length of it, they can give you an insight into the process. They won't be able to give you an indication of whether your proposal is likely to be funded or not, but they can tell you what they're looking for. They can tell you what their priorities are. They can tell you things that make good proposals. They can tell you what the time scale is. They can tell you who is likely to be on the panel, not necessarily names, but the type of people. And as I said, they don't want to have to send lots of really bad applications to their evaluators, because their evaluators will get fed up and stop wanting to do it. So, it's in their interest to help you put in good ones. So, have conversations with them. I would say a lot of them do run events. The Marie Curie fellowships are particularly good at that. Talk to alumni of the fellowships. Talk to them about did you talk to them, the funding bodies? I think that there's a lot. We have people come to our events that will talk to kind of early career researchers about what they look for. So some of the content in my talk has actually come from funding bodies representatives that have come out and done talks at events for early career chemists. I'd also say, if you are running events, then by all means approach them, and a lot of them have people that are kind of research liaison officers and other job titles where their job is actually to go out and promote. I think particularly some of the smaller funding organizations, they want to promote their funding schemes as well. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to use that as a resource.
Yeah, thanks. So we have another question for Elisabetta. I love this, it's really balanced. So how much should your supervisor contribute or help in the writing of the proposal? You said that you wrote it and then you send it back, but there are is it something that you always need to take care of and then the supervisor just proofreads that? Or what kind of support you get there?
I mean, I also say that I always keep in touch with my supervisor, so I send it for feedback at the last thing. But I keep in touch every time with my supervisor, asking things about infrastructure, their CV. For sure, during the Marie Curie, you have to insert the infrastructures, the host. University organization facilities, and also you have to insert your supervisor CV. So for sure you have to ask them everything. And another thing, the project, I wrote the project firstly, but then for sure I send it to my supervisor and they, I don't know, give me some advice. For example, try to write this in a more catchy way, or here I think that you have to focus on this part and try to modify it to be more in line with all the project. So I think that it's really a dialogue between you and your supervisor. I mean, in my case, but I think in every case, you have to write for sure your project because it's your project. But then you have this dialogue that it's a really long-lasting dialogue for almost 1 or 2 months with your supervisor when they tell you different advice and also gives you part of their CV and facilities of the university. So I guess the supervisors are really involved in the writing of the project.
Okay, thanks. So I have one question that I will ask Elisabetta from the perspective of the writer, and
Yeah.
Robert from the perspective of the evaluator.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the most important section of a proposal, and what's the first section that you look at? Or for Elisabetta, what's the section you thought was the most important, and which one is the first one you wrote? Which one is you think is the first one they look at? So we start with Elisabetta, otherwise we spoil the answer.
I mean, from my point of view, the first thing I thought at and I look at was for sure the research methodologies and my specific objectives, because I mean, all of the project is based on your specific objectives. So your dissemination, communication, your implementation, everything is related to your scientific part. I mean, it's not all about your scientific part because you have to sell yourself, your CV, to sell your host institution. But the thing was most important for me was for sure the research methodology.
Okay, Robert, what's the first section that you look at?
I think it is the first section. So you know, which bit are they going to read first? Because actually, you know, for some people, they put a lot of effort into the title, because you know you might have, you know, you might have kind of 20 that you're looking at once, and actually, if you've got them in a long spreadsheet, the one with a catchy title might be the one that kind of sticks in your head that you want to go back and look at again. I think having a really strong narrative right at the start, to actually laying out that kind of why, you know, before you even get into the specifics of the science, you know, it needs to be engaging, it needs to be interesting. You know, if you have to set the scene, you have to tell that story, tell the narrative. You know, you're writing to get them to buy into your project. Yeah, I use the phrase sell loosely, but actually you are trying to kind of, you want an emotional connection between the person reading it and your project. You want them to get excited about your project. So actually, if your opening section, your introduction, you're setting the scene isn't interesting, that's going to switch them off the rest, and they're going to pay less attention to the rest of it, I think, as well. But yeah, obviously, you know, it's good, and I think that's the other thing. There isn't one magic bullet with all of this stuff. All of those sections are important. So I don't think one bit is necessarily more important, but if the first thing they read doesn't capture their imagination, it's not going to make them want to read the rest of it, or they'll read it, but they won't give it their full attention.
That's so true, yeah. I have this picture, when I write a grant, I have this picture of evaluators reading it while doing, I don't know, while cooking and cleaning at the same time, and like, so I always try to make it.
Yeah, so I say exactly the same thing about a cover letter that goes with a CV. Yeah, you're trying to make an emotional connection with the person reading it. You know, they might have a stack of 50 CVs, they might have a stack of 50 grant proposals. It's 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. They've been putting this job off all week, but they know they've got to get it done because the deadline's approaching. And actually the ones that stand out are the ones that are well written and they find interesting. They're the ones that they're going to read a second time and put on the maybe pile rather than the no pile straight away. Because think about the process they're going for. Yeah, so you're exactly right, Claudia. Don't just think about the content, think about it from the reader's point of view. their personal situation, the circumstance they find themselves in when they're reading it. And that's why I was talking about why you're writing and what you write is so important rather than just the science.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 1 minute left before I give the stage back to João. And in this last minute, I'd like to ask both of you, what's your top tip? What's your top advice if for someone who's right now starting writing their own proposal? Elisabetta.
You go first.
My top advice. I think that the top advice I can give to someone is like try to, the advice I give in the presentation is like try to tell an engaging story. Try to also have fun during the writing of the fellowship. It's like it's your project. It's something that you like, that you love. It's solo your life. I mean, so just enjoy the writing and try to be more involved as possible, so the evaluator can feel that you really want this project, that it's yours. So this is my advice.
That's a great advice. Robert, it's going to be difficult for you now.
It is. I can't compete with that. So I think that the thing I'd say is probably don't underestimate how long it takes to do it well, and start it as early as possible, and that then gives you the time to find out everything you need to know. It gives you the time for multiple people to read it and give insight into it. Don't leave it till, oh, I've got 4 months left on my postdoc contract, I need to apply for a grant. Yeah, the minute you start your postdoc after your PhD, if you're serious about an academic career, you need to find out when those deadlines are and start planning, thinking strategically about your career and think backwards from those deadline dates. And actually that's so crucial to being successful, because that then gives you the time to do all the other things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's so true. I'll just add to that I have an Excel file with all the possible fellowships I could have applied for in the UK when I moved here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And,
so, yeah.
You know, and so don't underestimate how long it takes to research before you even sit down to start writing. You know, this is where thinking about your career strategically is so important. Yeah, you have to have the vision of your research that you can get excited about, but you also have to understand the environment that you're going to be existing in and what the outside forces that are going to be pulling your career back and forward are, and how you navigate those currents.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. So I'll just add the last advice, which is you are not alone. Just ask for help and support and advice.
Yeah, definitely.
João, you want to join us back?
Yes, thank you very much for this very engaging discussion. I will just finish with some closing remarks and highlight the previous webinars and workshops we have been organizing. So we have got some questions on this during this workshop. So you will find later on IUPAC YouTube channel this workshop as well. This has been pre-recorded and will be uploaded into there. So allow us some days, but please keep looking into that, and you will find this workshop as well as all the others that are already in there that were organized previously. And so, as I mentioned, this is the 6th workshop of the series, and all the others that you see here you can see them at the IUPAC YouTube channel. Also, we'll be organizing next workshops in the upcoming months, so please stay tuned to the IYCN social media accounts, so LinkedIn, Twitter, and so on. We'll be promoting the next events in there. And also I'd like to call your attention to this project that we have been partnering with the IUPAC. It is called the Chem Voices. You have here the website, so chemvoice.org, if you want to obtain more information. But briefly, we want to give a stage to the early career chemists and discuss topics of interest to them. So here you can also see some of the webinars that we have organized in the past, and all of them are again at the IUPAC YouTube channel. And also the next workshop will be next Tuesday, No, next to the April 29. Sorry for the mistake. You have here the link to join. So this will be a very nice webinar on science communication. We have two great speakers and a great moderator that is the governance team leader at the IYCN. So please join us and sign up for this event. So with this, I'd like just to end up this workshop by thanking very much Robert and Elisabetta for kindly sharing so much great insights, as well as Claudia for moderating the session, and as well as thank you all the attendees for joining us and keeping supporting us. And please, if you want to learn from a different topic, please email us. You have here our contact. We'll be very pleased to engage you. And with this, I would like to finish and thank you very much for joining and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.